Experiment 1, so he's a little bit on the lower end of thing. Playing 3 Brimaz in the main deck as well.
Yeah, that's a nice card. I like Brimaz. It kind of exacerbates like the mana issues that the deck kind of already has. We talked a little bit earlier about having Ajani versus Boon Satyr, and that can be kind of troublesome for your mana, and Brimaz just kind of adds to that, but it is a very, very powerful card.
Yeah, Experiment 1 is the turn 1 play for Vincent, and Elvish Mystic for Blandon. I mean, Vincent's just embracing the mana, kind of the mana issues of the deck here. If you see it, you know, we have Soldier of the Pantheon and Brimaz. We also have Experiment 1 and Boon Satyr, and these are all just, you know, all in the same deck together, which is playing 16 basics.
Yeah, sure hope I draw a dual land is the name of the game that this deck is playing, but I mean, that's fine. Like, you have Temple Garden and Mana Confluence. Some builds even play Temple of Plenty to help their mana issues, which it's kind of tough. You know, you don't really want the ETB tap land, and Vincent doesn't have any of those in his list.
Yeah, well, so far so good for Vincent. Started out with Experiment 1, followed up with Call of the Conclave. Blandon is down to 16, 2 from the Experiment 1, 2 from his Shockland. He did not have a turn 2 play. We'll see if he has the kill spell, though, as Vincent swings the team. Yeah. Looks like the answer is yes. Abrupt Decay is going to go ahead and get rid of that Centaur token. 2 more damage, however, going to be put into play off that Experiment 1. And speaking of mana issues, this one's not a color issue like you mentioned. It looks like Vincent has the other kind of mana issue where he simply just doesn't have a 3rd land.
Yeah, I mean, we see the Ajani and Boon Satyr in his hand when he's stuck on 2, so that's actually kind of cool, where no matter what land he draws, he's going to be able to cast one or the other.
Yeah, so it's good because you're like, okay, every color land gets me something, but at the same part, like, that there's a flip side, right? Like, no matter what basic I draw, I will have uncastable cards still in my hand.
Right, yeah, so, I mean, if you draw a forest, you get to play Boon Satyr, but then you still have to draw something else to play this Ajani.
Right. The deck really does want a dual land to start the game. And we see there a removal spell. This was Dreadboard, took care of Experiment 1. Soldier of the Pantheon's going to swing. Blandon will offer the trade with Elvish Mystic, turning the Mystic into a removal spell. And no 3rd land from Vincent again. You see waiting in the wings were Boon Satyr, Brimaz, Ajani, a lot of threats. Blandon's just going to go ahead and make a land. And then a Knight will come into play on the end step. See if this happens. It gets to live. Blandon can probably take a couple hits off this guy. It's not too big.
Yeah, 2/2 is not that big of a deal. I mean, if Vincent draws a land, he has a lot of options with either Brimaz, Ajani, or Boon Satyr, and then it's like, okay, well, maybe I can't actually take a bunch of hits from this 2/2 and I have to kill it, but it looks like Blandon's game plan is to just try and protect this Nissa in his hand.
Yeah, the Knight hits in for 2, a Centaur will join it, Call of the Conclave. So Vincent still has stuck on 2 lands for quite a few turns here, is making a game of it. At least he hasn't run out of things to cast just yet,
yeah,
but I believe his whole hand is uncastable at this point.
Yeah, he's used his mana basically every turn leading up to this, and now it's whether or not he starts drawing like the Advent of the Worm part of his deck, or if he draws lands or anything that costs 2 or less. Because so far, like you said, he's been doing a pretty good job of keeping up the pressure despite being kind of stuck on lands.
And we will see Blandon. He's going to play Chandra Pyromaster. Does get a tap out for Planeswalker. He's shocked here to play this. And it's going to plus it just to deal a damage.
Yeah, so the hope here is that either Vincent takes the turn off to attack the Chandra, or next turn you can use the 0 ability on Chandra to try and find the 3rd red mana for Mizzy Mortars.
Yeah, so he has he has Mortars in hand.
Yeah, he has Mortars, a Nissa, and a Forest.
Well, Vincent with tons of options. His draw for the turn was Temple Garden.
And there it is. That's the one you want.
Yeah, so now he can actually, it's the land that lets him play everything. So with Blandon at 10 and 5 power on the board, the question will be what card does Vincent play here? This is a pretty big decision.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a Johnny, because he's going to go ahead and swing for 5 to start.
It might just be Boon Satyr. I think at this point you're just trying to play around Mizzium Mortars, because you know that's a card that no matter what version of Jund you're playing against, they almost certainly have 2 to 3 copies in their deck.
And he's going to go ahead and play Brimaz here post-combat. So that doesn't play around Mortars. So what you were saying was to play Boon Satyr, end step, then untap and a Johnny it?
Yeah, probably. I mean, that seems like a reasonable plan, but also I don't think there's anything really wrong with just overloading the board also.
And Blandon looking for that red mana source. Not sure he finds it. He exiles Nissa with the Chandra 0 ability. And despite having all this time, Blandon looks to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. I think it was mostly just a little bit of a mana issue there. Like, if he had Mortars, he could potentially come back and win this game. The Ajani waiting in Vincent's hand definitely threatens lethal at any point, but I think not having that third red there really hurt him.
Yeah, so so that'll be the game there. So, and even if he does have the Mortars, if Vincent end steps the Boon Satyr instead of playing Brimaz there, he kills him anyway, right? So even if he overloads Mortars.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you put him on exactly having overload Mortars and he gets there, then your plan works out. But it could be that you put him to 5 and then maybe he plays like a bunch of different removal spells. One of them is instant speed that deals with your Boon Satyr.
Sure. And Brimaz at the end of the day is a better card than Boon Satyr.
In that situation, yeah.
Yeah, so opts to play it that way. Green-white aggro up a game here. And like that to me seems to be a difficulty of the matchup. Vincent missed his third land drop 4 times, I believe.
Yeah.
And still, it never felt like Blandon was ahead. You know, he got one of his planeswalkers down, right? He had Chandra. He had the opportunity to cast Nissa. This is supposed to be his late game, but his late game didn't seem like it was going to stabilize him there. You know, like, sure, he could have cast Nissa, and sure, he cast Chandra. Like, what do they do here?
Not a whole lot, and that's one of the things where this Joan Walker's deck feels like it's pre-boarded against control decks. It has a lot of things like Abrupt Decay, potentially Golgari Charm, which are good against Detention Spheres, and then you have things like Nissa, which are hard to deal with threats, but cards like Stormbreath Dragon and Pelucranos are really good against other creature decks, and Blandon doesn't have access to stuff like that. So we saw Steven Mann playing kind of like a hybrid version earlier in the day where he had Nissa and he had Pelucranos, so he's kind of hedging his bets in that way.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit earlier about Grand Prix Orlando, and that one's coming up October 3rd through 5th in Florida. But there's actually that's not the only Grand Prix that Star City Games is going to be putting on this year. And the one I'm pretty excited about, this is mid-November, so November 14th through 16th. It's Grand Prix New Jersey. This is going to be one of the bigger events of the year here. It is a Legacy, which first of all, you know, you only get, 1 to 2 Legacy GPs in the States a year. So this is going to be pretty awesome. On top of that, and this has probably my favorite playmat of at least the year in it. If you play it, you get a copy of, this is the Mercadian Masks art of Brainstorm. Just straight that on a playmat. This is only available coming to Grand Prix New Jersey. You have it on the playmat, deck boxes, and sleeves. And so they'll be giving away at this event. In addition to that, John Avon will be making an appearance at the event. For those of you who know, he does not show up at very many Magic events, but he's illustrated quite a few of the iconic Magic cards over the years.
A lot of lands, a lot of very beautiful looking lands.
Yeah, Johnny, I think pretty much I have specific lands I actually use like in my draft decks. I keep like 30 of my favorite of each kind of land, right?
Sure.
And I think 3 of the 5 that I've chosen are John Avon lands.
Only 3?
I mean, that's pretty good.
It is pretty good.
But you see there, so he's the guest of honor at that. Once again, we have VIP, we have a VIP ballroom, and many other things at that event, so it'll be a pretty sweet event. We'll be doing a live versus video also between Brian Brunduin and CVM on Friday evening. That's at 6 p.m. It'll be on SCG Live as well, but if you watch these guys online all the time and want to see them play in person, that will be happening as well. So make it out to the event. It'll be a pretty good time. You can pre-register now at magicgp.com.
Yeah, it's tough to beat that Mercadian Mask Brainstorm art, right?
That's just, yeah,
and if you're a fan of Legacy, I have to imagine you're a fan of Brainstorm.
Well, you should be playing blue if you're a fan of Legacy. And Brainstorm, I mean, it is just the best blue card in Legacy. And that's my favorite art of the card as well. Back to our match, though. We do have Vincent Lanceford. He's up a game. Remember, these players are 6-0. It's probably taken 8. If you can start out 8-0, that's usually good enough to reach the top 8. These players with great starts, but still needing more work to do. And this green-white aggro has been it's been a thorn in the side of the Jund Walker's deck. We'll see whether or not Blandon can make a comeback here. Post-board, he gets more kill spells, right?
2 Magma Spray, 2 Doomblade, 2 Anger of the Gods, and also has access to 2 Thoughtseize, 2 Scavenging Ooze, 3 Mistcutter Hydra, and 2 Circle of Flame.
Well, Circle of Flame, that is a sweet, okay.
That's for Rabble Red.
That's for Rabble Red. That is a sweet card to be using against Goblin Rabble Master.
It is a sweet card.
That's in a 2-mana enchantment that deals whenever a creature without flying attacks you, it takes 1 damage. So we're not going to see that one this time, but props to, I haven't seen that card in a board I don't know if I've ever seen one of those being played.
It's caught on a little bit recently.
It would also have got the Soldier of the Pantheon, but I don't think it's in his deck.
Yeah, that's about it.
We're underway with game 2. Blandon starts out with a tap land, and he'll have a turn 2 Caryatid. Vincent on Soldier of the Pantheon. He has that start. He has the double green, single white start, so he needs more help for that Ajani, but he has most of the rest of his deck turned on.
Oh, he does have a mana confluence. I think he actually has like a forest too many.
Okay, he has a 3rd green, so no need for that.
Right.
All right, swings in with Soldier, and actually gets the damage through, then plays Fleecemane Lion. So the idea there is that Blandon doesn't want to lose it to trade it with a Celestia Charm?
Well, a pump spell. You can't actually charm the Soldier.
Right. So what spell is he playing around by not blocking there?
I think it might just be one of those things where you don't really realize the interactions between the cards.
Sure. So, I mean, for example, I didn't realize it at first glance. I was like, oh, Celestia Charm. Okay, no blocks.
Yeah.
And like I wouldn't think longer about it. It is a free attack.
Yeah, I mean, like it's protection from multicolored, but that also affects your spells. You know, you think that like even though your guy has this protection ability, it would be kind of like a hexproof type thing.
Yeah, it's hexproof from multicolored, right?
Right.
Okay. Blandon, turn 3 play his Courser of Crufix. It shows another character on top of his deck, but Vincent is going to go ahead and take the aggro roll on more. This is going to be Ajani, Caller of the Pride. Looks like it's going to put a counter on Fleecemane Lion to let that guy crash through the Courser of Crufix.
Yeah, it's kind of rough if you put a counter on the Soldier and then you don't really have any good attacks that turn. It's tough to put all your eggs in one basket. Obviously, the Fleecemane Lion is the best creature on Vincent's side of the table right now, so if Blandon has a removal spell, which is certainly not unlikely.
He's going to go ahead and get it. We do see Mizzium Mortars in Blandon's spell. Maybe that's a victory from Vincent's side, though, right? Because then you get him to cast Mizzium Mortars for 2 instead of 6.
Right.
See Anger of the Gods waiting on Blandon's top deck. He doesn't have the second, well, he has the second red with Caryatid right now, so he could cast it next turn. And there comes Mortars on the Fleecemane Lion. So it didn't get overloaded that much. That much is a win for Vincent, but you're right, now his board looks a little anemic with just Soldier of the Pantheon and Ajani.
Yeah.
And second Sylvan Caryatid made for Blandon. Yeah, if Blandon could have afforded to wait another turn, he did have the triple red to overload Mortars, but because of the way Vincent played it, there was no time.
Yeah, I mean, you can't wait for Ajani to just make that thing a 5/5 and put it out of range, you know?
So it's like as sad as you are to have it die, you're still pretty happy with how that played. And we'll see. Vincent's going to have to reload now. We see Experiment 1 in his hand along with Call of the Conclave. Nothing immediately that gets through the wall Blandon has up. Vincent's going to have to work at it.
Yeah, I mean, 2 Caryatids and a Courser is a tough road.
Yeah. Fortunately, he has Ajani. Ajani will help. I mean, if Blandon doesn't have pressure, Ajani will eventually push through this wall.
Yeah, certainly given enough time, Ajani will be good, but it's also tough trying to fight through that anger. Like it looks like Vincent has an Experiment 1 and a Call of the Conclave, so probably going to look at pumping the Call of the Conclave this turn.
And he's going different. He's going to play Experiment 1, and he's going to double strike and fly the Soldier at Blandon for 4 damage.
Interesting. Just getting in the 4 points right now.
Yeah, I mean, Blandon can force a chump block out of Experiment 1 here, though. Plays Temple Garden tapped. Right? He just swings Courser at the Ajani.
Yeah, that is true. Alternatively,
just play
angers beforehand.
Oh, wow. I mean, that does mean he has to anger away his 2 Caryatids.
Right, which I think is what Vincent was going for. It was like, hey, man, please do this.
Let's trade your 2 Caryatids for my whole board. I mean, if I'm Blandon, I don't know what the rest of his cards is, but I'm inclined to say, yeah, I'm inclined to accept Vincent's offer. You know, we both have an empty board, but Blandon has a Courser. Like, that can't be that bad. Especially not if Blandon has this Xenagos. And are we going to see yet another Xenagos Plus here?
It
kind of
looks like
it is, isn't it? It's like the only mode on this card today. He's just this. Xenagos is just a mana ramp spell.
Wait, maybe not. Still at 3.
Oh, okay, it's a Satyr.
Yeah.
I mean, this kills Ajani also. Right?
It's true.
Okay. This is probably better.
Yeah, and this is certainly good because then he doesn't have to anger away his Caryatids, and Vincent can't get through the wall that Blandon has. So it encourages him to overextend further into the anger that he knows is already waiting there for him.
If you look at the top of Blandon's deck, there's no reprieve here from sweepers.
No.
This Mizzium Mortar is just casually waiting as the next draw.
Yeah, Vincent's in, I don't want to say like a tight spot, because it's a pretty bad spot, really.
He's got Blandon to 12. That's a start. But usually when green-white loses board control, they become really reliant on cards like a Johnny to deal the 5 points, the final points of damage.
Yeah, it's true. But it's going to be tough to cobble together 12 points.
Right. The draw was Mizzy and Mortars for Blandon. Next card on top is Courser of Krufix. That one's not too necessary. But like I said before, this is the point where John Walker's just has plenty of things to do with the cards they already have.
Yep, exactly.
And here's another Satyr. I'm not sure if those guys can get in yet. Soldier of the Pantheon member can just eat Satyr tokens.
Yeah, I mean, it might be worth it just to get in the 4 points of damage. Just trade a Satyr for 4 points.
Sure. And that's what he's going to do. Vincent drops to 17. We'll see Anger and Mizzy and Mortars, the two cards in his hand.
Yeah, I think the one card that Blandon is fearing the most is Advent of the Worm, just because it's the one thing that is out of range of both of those cards.
Yeah, and you see here a real show of confidence on Blandon's side. He could have overloaded Mortars at Vincent's board that turn, but just opted not to.
Yeah, I mean, why bother? He has two things that are both held in check by Sylvan Caryatids. You can just wait for him to play at least a third threat, if not a fourth.
Yeah, the one thing that Vincent has going for him is that Blandon doesn't have a great clock here.
Yeah.
Of all the Planeswalkers, like, Xenagos is not, especially when you have a Soldier of the Pantheon, Xenagos is not particularly good at killing your opponent.
Yeah, that's certainly true.
Call Conclave made for Vincent. It's going to evolve Experiment 1. Bramaz made as well. That's going to involve Experiment 1. And I mean, boy, sure looks like a great time to Mizzy and Mortars now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, but Vincent got it to a point where his Experiment 1 is a 3/3, can attack Xenagos, potentially force a chump on the Sylvan Caryatid, or he loses the Xenagos, and then Blandon might not have the third red to overload Mortars. So I guess if he chumps, then he has to use the mana ability of Xenagos to do it.
Right, but the mana ability of Xenagos is more than enough to do that.
Yeah, so...
And it looks like that swing was at Blandon.
Oh, okay.
And he just takes 3.
That's also reasonable. Like, you could be trying to set it up so that you have an Ajani that can actually kill him.
Yeah, I actually think that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, you can try and play this grindy game, right, where you try and beat through everything, but it's kind of impossible to do that also.
Your deck is not well suited to outgrind Jund Walkers.
And Vincent knows that despite Mizzy and Mortars, he's still going to have Experiment 1 left over if he regenerates.
Yeah. I was wondering, and talk to me about this one, if he had just played the Call or just played the Bramaz, what if he also baited the Mizzy and Mortars that way?
I think he needed to play 2 things to double evolve his Experiment 1.
Okay. So that he had a 3 damage swing there?
Yeah.
All right, I'll buy it. And Blandon will too. That forced the Mizzy and Mortars. Vincent's team is forfeit there, except for the Experiment 1, which devolves, if you will, down to a 1/1.
Sure.
And a swing for 4 puts Vincent down to 13. More coursers, but no land. So this double courser is going to be good, but it's like the source of life gain is actually, if Blandon finds lands, will be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it just puts him further and further out of range of something crazy like an Ajani happening.
Yeah, Voice of Resurgence, that was the play for Vincent. We do know, however, that there's an Anger of the Gods if he chooses to play it. Blood Crypt off the top of the game puts Blandon back up to 11 thanks to the 2 coursers. And I'm interested if Blandon is just going to Anger, then make a Satyr, and then swing 6.
It's tough. I don't know. Like, maybe you want to keep attacking, and either Vincent has to trade away his guys, or you always have the threat of having this thing that can maybe finish off an Advent. So, like, if he blew his Anger now, perhaps, like, running Advents might be able to stabilize him or something. I mean, like, Vincent's at a low life total. Maybe that's not actually the case, but...
By having Advent in my hand, that means I could swing some Satyrs into a Worm token and then post-combat deal 3 more.
Right, exactly.
All right, what Vincent does have is a Fleek's main line, continues to commit creatures here, but as you said, he is down to 5 life, and with Xenagos making more and more attackers each turn, this is close to being lethal. Blandon can push 4 damage through. We don't know about the 5th one yet.
Well, he could Anger this turn and then make a Satyr. That might potentially walk into anything if Vincent has some tricks. Like, he could have something like Ajani's Presence.
Sure. And he's going to go for it. All 3 Caryatids are going to make an Anger of the Gods that exiles everything, including Vincent's lands, and
yeah,
we'll get,
that's a good Anger.
Yeah. exiles everything. No, Blandon evens it up at 1 game apiece. So we'll be on to game 3 here between Greenwood Aggro and Jund Walkers.
And it can be tough to fight through this wall of removal that the Jund deck has, right? But I think Vincent's saving grace is things like Voice of Resurgence, where it really demands a specific answer from Blandon.
All right, I mean, that's definitely true. We see, and what I saw in that game is that it wasn't just kill spells. The kill spells were sweepers, and that to me seems to be the really important part of it, right? He had 2 Mizium Mortars and an Anger, which were the removal spells he cast that game. And the fact that he was could overload them and could sweep the board seemed to be more than Vincent could deal with.
Yeah, to be fair, like the first Mortars was just hard cast, and the Anger was cast at a point where, like, yes, it did win the game exactly that turn, but it probably didn't need to be cast. So it was just, for the most part, 1 sweeper, and if Blandon had had that 1 sweeper in game 1, that could have potentially made all the difference also. So maybe it is just like you need 1 good overloaded Mortars or 1 good Anger of the Gods, and that might be enough to stabilize him.
To me, the pivotal play of that game is there was a turn where Vincent had an Ajani on 5, and he -3'd to deal 2 additional points to Blandon, but that allowed Blandon to just just to cast a Xenagos, make a Satyr, and just kill Ajani. And once Vincent lost the Ajani, I never really felt like he had a reasonable chance at dealing dealing 20.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that too. I think that Ajani was doing a lot of work and taxing Blandon's removal a lot, and it gave Vincent something that over time would allow him to attack through these Caryatids, attack through those Courser Crew fixes, and potentially set up like a very lethal Alpha Strike in the air with Flying and Double Strike.
Yeah, well, the one thing that Blandon was really soft to that entire game would have been a 5/5.
Right.
Because his creatures can't fight it, he can't remove it, and like Ajani helps make a 5/5.
Yeah, that's true.
Granted, the last card on Brandon's deck was a Abrupt Decay, so maybe, like, I'm not saying that gets there for Vincent. It's definitely questionable, but I think it gives him a shot.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, things would be different.
So I want to look at Vincent's sideboard for a second, because there are some cards in here that are that I don't typically see in in boards here. The first one, and we're going to try to get this card for you, is a Spirit Bonds. And this is a card that I've been a big fan of in M15 drafting, because first of all, it's white and is really good with triplicate spirits, which means you just want to draft it all the time. But on top of that, it's actually pretty interesting. Whenever you play a non-token creature, if you're willing to kick it for a white, basically play another white, you get a 1/1 spirit. So that seems good, but not great. The thing I'm really excited about is the second ability, is that you can pay 2 mana and sack a spirit to make any of your guys indestructible. So given time, it's like you have a bunch of Ajani's presences just waiting on the board.
Yeah. I like Spirit Bonds a lot, and it is one of those cards. You see 1 copy in Vincent's sideboard, and it is one of those cards where, like, maybe if you draw 2, it's not as good. There's certainly some diminishing returns, even though they stack. Basically after the first Spirit Bonds, you probably just want an additional creature instead. So playing it as a 1-of, I think, is very fine, where it is good if you draw it. You're not leaning on it to swing a matchup in a particular direction, but if it's there, it's awesome.
Yeah, it seems pretty good. Is this the kind of matchup where you'd want it? I mean, Blandon is on a stack of removal.
Yeah, I mean, well, both in the fact that it makes extra creatures and can protect your creatures that matter. So if you get into a spot where you can actually make that lethal Ajani swing, you have some protection there.
Yeah, so I like the card. I would be excited to see one hit the battlefield.
Me too.
I haven't seen that one in Constructed yet, but it certainly was a card that when I started seeing M15 spoilers, thought, hey, I don't know if it'll see play, but this card is costed so that it might see play.
Yeah, I mean, Neil Reeves was working pretty hard on a Spirit Bonds deck leading up to PTM 15 and almost played it. He ended up playing Mono Blue Devotion, but he said that the Spirit Bonds deck was close.
So that sounds really interesting. We haven't seen any sort of Spirit Bonds deck.
It was basically like Mono White Devotion with some Apharas and a couple Nykthos to play multiple spells in a turn.
Do you have triplicate spirits?
No.
Okay.
He had 2 Hopeful Eidolons.
Is that a spirit?
It is a spirit.
Ooh, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just assumed, because you said, hey, it's good in the Spirit Bonds deck.
Well, yeah, but it's also just a cheap creature, and it was one of his ways to beat aggressive decks by playing like turn 3 Brimaz and then turn 4 pantsing it up with the Eidolon, just going to town.
And this was a Nykthos deck, right? So
he had 2 Nykthos.
So any one drop that like costs your correct color of mana is in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that from Mono Blue Devotion, right? Where it's like any
one
mana,
for one.
yeah, any 1/1 for one is a maybe. It's a solid maybe. But the cheaper the creatures are, it's also better with Spirit Bonds, right? Because if you go Spirit Bonds and then turn 3, you would have to play a 2-mana guy, and then turn 4, you have to play a 3-mana guy. So it's like if you have a lot of expensive stuff, that can be a problem, but it's really, really cheap.
All right, well, we are underway with Game 3, Lanceford versus Cannon. Lanceford will be on the play this game, and he's going to try to be as aggressive as possible. Starts with Experiment 1 into Fleece Main Lion, swings 2. Blandon is down to 18.
He's playing fast, he's playing aggressive. He has a 1-drop, a 2-drop, and a Temple Garden.
This is everything you'd want.
And it looks like another land and a Banishing Light for a follow-up.
That is a pretty good start. Sylvan Caryatid is going to be the play from Blandon. And so when I said like these Jund, like these like green XX decks, when I'm on the play and I have Elvish Mystic, I love them. When I'm on the draw and my first play is Sylvan Caryatid, I feel like my deck's way too fair.
You're lukewarm.
I mean, you're like turn 1 Temple, turn 2 Caryatid. Like, say Vincent this turn had played a 3, like been like Brimaz swing. Like as the Walker's player, wouldn't you feel like, gosh, this game's already over? And
you have to untap and play 2 removal spells.
Right, and you have to have it right now, or you're gonna just die. So you see on Blandon's side, he plays maybe I'll stabilize here. Plays Courser of Krufix, then plays a land, gains a life, shows Caryatid on top. Vincent didn't have any plays last turn, so Blandon looks like he took that turn to catch up.
Yeah, I mean, I think Vincent disguised it pretty well by playing out the second force instead of the Mana Confluence. If you play the Mana Confluence there, you're saying, hey, I have the mana to cast all my spells, and I didn't cast any of them, so like clearly something is up. Like, I just don't have a lot of action going on here.
Yeah, on his turn, Vincent's going to Banishing Light the Courser and crash in for 5 more. He did draw Brimaz that turn and has Mana Confluence, so he's going to play that. And I like the sequencing here. It gets in 5 damage, knowing that next turn he can evolve the Experiment 1 with Brimaz to get through Caryatid.
Yeah, me too. But it looks like Blandon does have what I was talking about, where he just wants to play 2 removal spells on this turn, probably.
Just going to kill everything. He does have a Mizium Mortars. See if he has a second one. Mortars for the Lion. Cat's down. And it does look like a Doomblade or some variant.
Ultimate price, I think. So do you want to let Vincent untap and have the potential to cast an Advent the Worm or something crazy, or do you want to just kill it now? I think killing it now is probably best.
Going to kill Experiment 1. That does mean that he is left without a kill spell for Brimaz that we know is in Vincent's hand.
That is true, but he also knows that he's going to play Nissa next turn, so maybe it's not that big of a deal.
Doesn't seem like it would be.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully he gets to play it with a land that he can make into a 4/4 and actually have on blocking duty.
Vincent plays out the rest of his hand. It was an Experiment 1 that he drew into a Brimaz. Experiment 1's a 2/2, and 3/4 Cat King joins him on the board. And will that be enough? Blandon does have the land, and we are going to see what I think is our green Planeswalker here. And there she is. And 4/4 is just big enough to be real inconvenient for Vincent.
Right, and that's where the Hopeful Eidolon would come into play. And
I mean, you just can't beat it, right? If you were to Hopeful Eidolon the Brimaz, this would just be game over. Banishing Light. Remember, Banishing Light cannot hit lands that will take care of the Nissa. He checked about the land and was like, wait, no, can't do that.
I would like to do that, but if I can't, this is also okay.
It would have been, yeah. Ideally, you would have Banishing Lighted the land and then killed the Nissa and then passed back, but
instead, you have this 4/4, and
yep.
I guess my guys are playing D.
Maybe you'll draw on a Johnny. That'd be sweet. Maybe you draw... 4/4 is really big.
Advent's good. Celestia Charm's good.
Yeah.
Vincent's drawn pretty live. He's got a couple Boon Satyrs, too, if he ever hits a 5th land.
Yeah, Blandon doesn't have too much going on either. It's kind of a top deck race here. But it does seem like Blandon has a lot more outs. You know, all of his Planeswalkers are really good here.
Yep.
Any kill spell is pretty good. Whereas Vincent's on about like 8 or so draws that actually matter.
Yeah, that's true. But like, how many times can Blandon draw a Mana Source or a Sylvan Caryatid while Vincent draws a semi-relevant card like a Soldier of the Pantheon before it actually gets out of control, you know?
Yeah, you're right. If Vincent gets to be plus enough creatures on Blandon, then it's not going to matter.
Right.
See, Blandon there drew a Stomping Ground. Vincent drew a spell of some sort that he's just going to hang on to. Blandon's got to hope it's not Advent of the Worm. And at this point, if you're Vincent and you're drawing like little creatures, are you going to hold them back or just play them all out?
I think you might want to play them out, because if Blandon draws a Mortars, you're probably already in a really bad spot.
Yeah. He didn't draw Mortars, but a big draw for Blandon. He drew Abrupt Decay, got back his Nissa, and goes back to work making 4/4s.
Yeah, so 1/4/4 was already a problem for Vincent. I can't imagine that more 4/4s is going to be any better for him.
Yeah, Nissa is certainly one of the category of planeswalkers that, when left unchecked, runs away with the game.
Yeah.
All the lands will start to rise up in combat.
That's a risky attack there. If Vincent had actually drawn an Advent, you see him draw it like a one-turn window too late. If he had Advent there, he could have ambushed the 4/4 and then potentially attacked back at the Nissa.
Yeah, Blandon would have been forced to chump away with some Caryatids.
Yeah.
So he did draw Advent.
He did draw Advent this turn.
And the way he played it, it looks like he drew Plains this turn.
Right.
What is Blandon doing? It is Mizzium Mortars, and he has it overloaded as well with the mana up. This is going to be big, but there's a chance. So Vincent was debating whether or not he could save his Experiment 1 by Adventing.
Right, but then the Worm token would have 4 damage on it.
Right.
And you can't effectively block a 4/4 at that point. So I think it's worth it to lose the Experiment 1 and then keep the 5/5 around for sure.
Yeah, you'd eat a 4, and especially if Vincent activates that last land and swings the team of 4/4s, you can eat a 4/4, then kill the Nissa. Yeah, but then you're dead on the swing back. You'd need some top deck help.
Right, he would need something.
But there's a chance. And you see Nissa makes a third 4/4. Things are looking great for Blandon, but like I said, Vincent has a shot. It's for 12. Which land do you want to kill? Doesn't matter. He's going to make a Worm token. That's step 1.
That is definitely going to happen. We know that. As far as which land specifically, it doesn't matter a whole lot. You can try and pick on his red sources. You can try and pick on his forests to make his Nissa not as effective, but I don't think that's the mode that Nissa's really in. Ultimately, it's like they're all vanilla 4/4s. It doesn't really matter.
He's going to go to 6. He probably has to kill the Nissa, and he hopes that this top deck will keep him alive. But it's not. It's a Plains. So Blandon will be able to swing back for 12 trample. That's too much. And 2-1 Blandon Cannon moves up to 7-0, defeating Vincent Lanceford's green-white aggro deck.
Yeah, those games were close.
And that was like one of the most... So Nissa Worldwaker is a card, like the most hyped card out of M15. Or at least one of the most, if not the most.
Rabblemaster might be.
Rabblemaster, I think, like, has come up as the most, like, over time has gotten the